But let's get started, as we so often do, as we usually do, by getting seated, getting grounded, and sitting with a sense of dignity. And again, recalling that this idea of dignity is a kind of self-generating sense of self-worth. We use the quote from Dag Hammarskjöld, the sort of UN, he was the head of the UN and also a Christian mystic, and he wrote that the only kind of dignity which is genuine is that which is undiminished by the indifference of others. So we use that as a touchstone, using this idea of dignity that is so deeply ours that we don't become subject to the influences of other people's opinions. Something we can strive for, self-generating dignity. We experience that dignity in the physical body by first getting really connected to the earth, metaphorically through the floor, mat, the blanket. Feeling the strength of the large bones of the lower body, giving us a connection to the earth. And then, as we rise up, the bones becoming progressively smaller, but consequently giving us also a greater sense of lightness, so that we rise up from the base through to the crown of the head. Relaxing the shoulders and balancing the skull over the crown of the head. And feeling the goodness of the breath. Don't worry, we saved space for you. So feeling the goodness of the breath and really focusing our attention on feeling the breath, which is to differentiate it from thinking about the breath itself. So oftentimes when we are working with the breath, we say to ourselves, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, or we analyze the quality. Instead, we find ourselves just aware of the flow of breath in and out, and without naming or analyzing, we simply be with it, notice its quality. So feeling the goodness of the earth and the spine rising up to the sky, and the breath flowing in and generating sensation and flowing out and generating sensation. And then taking the hands to the hip crease for the opening bow, we, with this gesture, open the heart and strengthen the back. Continuing to develop that quality of dignity and openness. And then we slowly incline the body forward. And coming up. Releasing from the posture, we, no surprise here, take our first preparatory pose, butterfly. And taking the soles of the feet together, and by now you know, generously distancing the heels from the hips, the pelvis. And we slowly come forward, finding that point of sticking in the architecture of the body, and then we just fold over it and completely surrender ourselves. And we contemplate the first of our 3 questions, which is, am I here now? Noticing how we can become distracted how we can become lost in thought, and then how we come back. So as we breathe, experience the breath in the pose, when we wander coming back, we note the coming back. In most cases, because we find that it's actually a kind of natural tendency to wander. So noting the wandering is like noting the habitual behavior, and noting the coming back is noting the behavior that we're seeking to develop, which is this awareness of our desire, our innate desire to be in the present moment. So when we wander, we're actually engaging in a kind of learned behavior that masks our innate desire to be connected to what is going on right now. And because we so often experience the opposite, that we feel like wandering and being distracted is in our nature, is our essential nature, we reinforce the moments of return, which are inevitable. Even when we're in the course of life, living a life in deep, deep distraction, there's still those moments of coming into the present moment that kind of, like a distant echo, remind us of our essential quality of wakefulness. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? And we come up slowly. We pause to note the quality of the body in and out of the pose. And then finding our way onto our abdomens for Sphinx pose, the back bend, so coming down. And bringing the forearms parallel, perhaps to begin, with the elbows under the shoulders. And again, just for sake of awareness, we can do anything we want with the arms. And we can widen or narrow the legs. The essential architecture is the arc of the spine created by the position of the elbows under the shoulders. For some, the pose is too intense here, so the elbows shift forward slightly. And for others, needing more intensity, the arms begin to straighten early in the practice. The head can relax or remain in line with the spine. For a rare few, even dropping the head back feels very comfortable. So we're finding the essence of the pose in the spine and then allowing everything else from the shoulders on up and from outwards and from the hips down to be as they need to be to sustain that back bend. The breath the pose. In the mind, noting when we come back from wandering. Then asking the second question, or adding the second question, which is, can I feel what's going on in my body? Again, different from thinking about what's going on in our body. We're feeling what's going on. Again, emphasizing a kind of feeling quality of mind, of awareness, and letting go of cognitive analysis. There is definitely a time for cognitive analysis, but trying to reach into the feeling tone of the body and the posture. Feeling perhaps first the very strong sensations, and then becoming aware of more and more subtle interactions between the body and the clothing you're wearing or the floor. Everything that generates feeling. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please slowly come out of your Sphinx pose and rest for a moment. Allow the back to settle, taking your time to feel the back and the dissipating sensation. And then from your abdomens, keeping your head as it is, please roll onto your back, your head oriented as it is, as we come in for the twists. And for our twists, beginning by bringing the feet flat to the floor, the knees bent, and then with general consensus on the meaning of left and right, we'll drop the knees to the left. We'll just see who paid attention in grade school. So from here, with your knees dropped to the left, if you need less sensation, please just lift your top knee away from the bottom. And if you need more, hook the bottom ankle on the outside of the top knee or thigh. And finally, if you'd like, raising the right arm up and overhead, just distribute the stretch throughout the entirety of the side waist, here in twist. Breathing and allowing this sensation to settle across the spine and up through the side waist of the body. Our final question is, can I relax around that sensation? And by that relaxing, we mean relaxing first and foremost the grasping with the mind. The grasping of the mind taking two sort of forms, the first of which is to name, label, and otherwise classify sensation. And the second is to make concrete and permanent a sensation. So the way that this tends to play out is that we feel a sensation in the body and we immediately label it. And then the tendency of the mind is to want to persist that sensation past its actual experienced point. So there's a very funny video. Well, I guess it depends on your perspective. There's a video that seems for a lot of people to be very funny to watch of a person, it's an elevator camera, and there's a man who comes in a beekeeping suit with a box. And what happens is the man drops the box and the other person in the elevator immediately starts screaming and swatting at themselves to prevent themselves from being stung. And this is being helped by the fact that the other person in the beekeeping suit is kind of throwing glitter at them. Point being is that there's no bees, but the tendency of the mind to sort of react with fear to that stimulus, to that idea, allows those people to continue to kind of sit there and flail for far longer than the actual event is happening. It's cruel but useful from a learning about human psychology perspective. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Please come back to center now. And taking a moment to stretch and release. For many people, twist being a very intense experience, more so than even back bends or forward bends. And so taking a moment, and then once again, reconnecting the feet to the floor, let's drop the knees over to the right, doing all of the things that we did on the other side, including lifting the knee, top knee if we're having too much sensation, hooking the right ankle onto the left thigh if we're not getting enough, and choosing to lift the left arm if we'd like. So this trapped in an elevator with glitter as bees just really shows us that we're mentally sort of trained to, maybe from a survival perspective or from an experience perspective, to really stick with certain emotions and sensations. Another teaching from I believe it was a Zen teacher, I can't remember exactly where I heard it, was talking about the relationship between, or how fear works, and he talked about sort of when you are a hiker and you meet a bear. This is probably, not an experience that many of us would want to have, but the point is that, every moment in our relationship with the bear, no matter what happens, is a future projection. So we see the bear, and we experience fear mostly because we can imagine ourselves being chased down and eaten. And this is useful, of course, because bears can, I suppose, chase down and eat people. But the point being is that each moment that we're experiencing something, we can choose to see that as either we can choose to experience what is in the present moment or what we project will be. And it's those projections of what will be that we're looking to short circuit. I've often talked in this class about my relative fear of flying, which is really a fear of turbulence, being cooped up in a plane. And one method that people teach for people to overcome this is to be distracted, to distract themselves by playing music or playing a game. I tend to move in the opposite direction, which is I actually fully embrace my relationship to the turbulence. And what I've come to realize, and this is a good example of how the 3 questions model can help us in everyday life, is that I'm not afraid of the turbulence, I'm afraid of what's going to happen next. So we go through turbulence and we hit a bump, and I realized the bump itself wasn't so bad, but it's the fact that at any moment, the wings are going to snap off and the plane's going to drop out of the sky. So it has nothing to do with what has happened, it has to do with my projection of what will happen, or that the next bump will be worse. I can never understand why the captain can't come on and tell everyone to fasten their seatbelts and get the plane into emergency mode. But we can see that my tendency, and maybe you have similar experiences in this in different ways, is that I'm really connected to what will happen, not what is happening. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Slowly coming back to center. Taking a moment to settle the body, stretch and release. So you might find it, particularly if you've been practicing with us for a bit, that the 3 questions intro, I often use this myself, is really a good point of time to sort of bring up and to bring contemplations from awareness to some of the ways in which these 3 questions might be useful in the space off of the mat. Thinking about the things that we future cast on that we're sort of rejecting, and seeing if we can be more present with them. So moving into our main practice now, we'll come up and reorienting ourselves to face towards the front of the room, towards the pond. And we'll begin in a wide knees child's pose with a twist. And the twist is literally a twist, not like a surprise child's pose variation that you never heard of before. It's a child's pose with a twist. We're going to drink martinis. So the twist part, so we're working with heart and small intestine. This is an arm line. So taking the knees wide, we'll thread the right arm under the line of the collarbones, and feeling free either to extend the left arm forward or to bring it alongside the body. There's no particular preference in terms of choice, but importantly, the back of the right hand is on the floor. If you do it the other way, it's like a chain letter that you haven't sent out. Something bad will happen. So back of the hand on the floor, please, if you don't want the world to end. I'm going to come around, note everyone who wants the world to end. So, oh good. All of you are trying to save the world with your arm position. So the the heart and small intestine arm lines, with the heart line running up the back of the arm, up through, the heart line running through the front of the arm, up through into the chest, and the small intestine line running up the back of the arm into the shoulders and down. The heart line runs up through the body and then up through the side and to the side of the head. I will, by the way, give a 4-minute chime for intensifying the pose, although because we're working with an arm and shoulder line, this should be done with a good deal of awareness so that you're not pushing the shoulder past its capacity. So the heart, in traditional Chinese medicine, the second of the three sort of aspects of this class, the first being the three questions, the second being traditional Chinese medicine, the heart organ, in traditional Chinese medicine is really the minister of the body. It's kind of the emperor of the whole body. It is responsible for enshrouding and balancing what in traditional Chinese medicine is called the Shen, or the spirit. And the Shen, different from our kind of Western idea of spirit or soul, is the complex of the personality, the body, and the mind. So the heart acts like the sun, providing a kind of warmth and energy to the entire body, mind, personality complex, communicating to us both our personal experience as well as our connection to the world outside. So in some sense, clarity of this organ of the heart is really reflected in a integrated and whole sense of self with a felt and experienced connection to the rest of the world. As Harriet Beinfeld and Ephraim Korn write, it establishes an interconnectedness between our inner life and external universe. The small intestine, as its yang pair, like the small intestine of the physical body, of the Western anatomical body, is focused on separating the pure from the coarse. It is a differentiator. It extracts what is useful and releases that which is unuseful, along with the large intestine. Just another minute. So working together, the small intestine processes not only the physical, but also the mental. So it ensures that we are receiving and processing only that which is useful to us, releasing negative input and processing and sending on the positive. Noticing that there's not a wholesale rejection of negative input, it's still received, but it's processed accordingly. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So please come up and out. Many parts of the body folded and twisted in that position, so please take a moment to open up those joints so that you have some freedom in the flow of blood and energy again before we come back into the pose and take the other side. So when you're ready, please come back into the wide knees child's pose and thread the left arm through, feeling free to extend the right arm. And again, for the sake of the world, please bring the back of the hand to the floor with the left arm. one thing that's important is that we don't, or one important lesson of the small intestine in particular is that the goal is not to reject or, in a sense, avoid negative input. That is really impossible in many ways if we choose to live a full and engaged life. But rather that we have developed the strength of that particular organ's function, so that when we receive negative input, we can process it correctly. When the small intestine in the body is dysfunctional, nutrient absorption, the processing of the macronutrients is suspect and challenged. And so we may experience malnourishment or improper absorption, malabsorption. And all of that from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective is felt both on the physical level as well as on the mental. So the question is not so much do we subsist on a diet of only positive thinking and organic foods, but rather have we developed a body through practice, a body and mind through practice, that is capable of differentiating between what is helpful and what is not, taking action accordingly. So together, the heart which experiences and unifies the three parts of the sort of individual Chinese medicine, the personality, body, and mind. And then unifies the outside world in relationship to us, combined with the intestines which purify and help us to release those things that we should not keep in. Working together in harmony, these two organs create a kind of healthy unity of self and a healthy relationship with the outside world. If you're a person who tunes into the news on a daily basis, our small intestines have been quite active lately, in the sense that as we move through a year of preparations for presidential elections and crisis in the world, the mental aspect of the small intestine is very busy trying to process all of this input. About a minute. You might have begun to experience a kind of fatigue, kind of mental, energetic fatigue around all of the things that need to be processed in both your personal world and in the larger social scale, geopolitical, if you follow those things, economic. And so you experience the realities of the small intestine, how when we become fatigued, things that are negative begin to creep in. One might argue on a national level, the kind of national energetic small intestine is just completely shot to hell. I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? And can I relax around that sensation? Please come out of that posture. I've never known anyone to be like, no, I don't want to, but I like to ask, just in case. So go ahead and stretch. So when I say that the sort of national small intestine is shot to hell, what I mean by that is that there is a quality that arises when we're just so fatigued that we begin to ingest and work with things that are unhelpful for us. So, but our next posture will be quarter dog. So quarter dog, from a all fours position, we will, in this case, bend the right arm so that it is mostly parallel. Now, for some people, the head falls on the forearm, and for others, the arm is forward enough and the head comes down. Again, no preference. Depends on shoulder flexibility here. The other arm reaches forward, and ideally, the eyes turn to look under the left armpit. So when you're ready, kind of like, well, now, even if you're not ready, let's bring the right forearm parallel and bring the left arm forward, either resting your head on your forearm or allowing your head to come behind the line of the forearm. We're coming into a back bend here, but one with the arm in this position also helping to open the small and large intestine lines. So one of the things that, and regardless of your political slants or belief, that we have sort of noticed is that there's a sort of national rejection of existing models. And when we see a pendulum swing, it's often, or when we experience pendulum swings like this in our body, we can say it's, part of the fatigue of the small intestine, that unable to really grasp and grapple with the inputs, we simply begin to feel like whatever we don't have is the right thing. The opposite direction is best. Like it, yeah. So one of the famous sutras in the Yoga Sutras says, when in the presence of negative thoughts, cultivate the opposite or go in the opposite direction. This is a very famous piece of advice. Now, the problem with this sutra, or there's no problem with the sutra, the challenge with the sutra is fine, it's been around for a while, it must be good stuff. So the challenge with implementing this sutra is we have to know what negative thoughts are. We have to know what is unhelpful, and that's where the intelligence of the small intestine comes in. And paired with the heart, we have to have a sense of ourselves. We have to have a sense of who we are. And then we have to connect with the world around us as it is. Not as we wish it would be, but as it is. So when we experience this, when we work to experience the world as it is, we come at it from the perspective of being very grounded in ourselves. And this brings us back to the three questions, which is, we can only be grounded in ourselves to the extent to which we are present and we are relaxed in terms of our willingness to experience what is going on in a very raw and pure way, rather than interpreting and rather than sort of seeking to create reasons for things. We have to engage in feeling making before we engage in sense making, or feeling experiencing before we engage in sense making. To deepen this posture, if you want to go a little deeper, is about bringing the chest closer to the floor. So what that requires is more of an extension of the torso down through the midpoint of the back, through the breastbone in the front and through the spine in the back, down towards the earth. But don't force this, as your neck will take the strain if you're working with reduced flexibility. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Start to draw yourself out and take a moment to move intuitively in relationship to not only your hips and back, but also your shoulder. And then taking the other side when you're ready. Everyone's thinking to themselves, we can beat the clock. Class has to be over at 9:20, so if we just all sit here. It's like if you were teaching yoga in like high school. I'm not going to do down dog. You can't make me do down dog. Oh, watch me. So taking the other side here. So the left arm, parallel the right arm going forward. And turning the eyes underneath the right armpit if you'd like. So when we are working with this heart and small intestine complex, we're really working with something very fundamental and very important. All the other organs, in a sense, are dependent upon how these two function. We might say that, we could say that about every organ system, but for right now, just really attending to the fact that we need to have this clarity about ourselves and about the world around us. And we need to be able to reject and accept information, emotion, the world. One of the things that is a nice connection here between Buddhism, the third aspect of this class, and this particular organ set is that we can think about the way in which the world around us and our own experience of the world can be very heartbreaking at times. Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche and the Shambhala system really emphasizes, for example, this idea of the tender-hearted warrior. And in Buddhism proper, there's many strands that kind of look at how we develop our sense of awareness and wakefulness in the world, and how we really become aware of the inherent quality of suffering. And that quality of suffering, rather than hardening us, in fact, makes us softer. And that softness is at the same time balanced with a kind of wisdom, a blended sadness and wisdom that allows us to be tender-hearted and broken-hearted at the world, but at the same time very much awake and alive and committed to working with it. Don't know if anyone in the room has seen the movie Seven, with Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. It's been a while since it came out, and it's not exactly the most pleasant movie. At all. At all. But at the end of the movie, Morgan Freeman quotes a passage, and he says, you know, I believe that the world is a good place and it's worth defending. He ends the movie, given its dark tone, with saying, well, I agree with the second part. So the world is maybe not a good place in the sense that it is not devoid of evil, but it is a good place in that it is the place that we have. And consequently, it's worth defending, but defending it from whom? And from what? And if we try to bring that down to our own world, which is to say our own relationship to the world, because there is no world without our relationship to it. The world only exists in relationship. You begin to deepen the posture. The chest moves a little bit more towards the floor. Stretches and opens the chest and the armpit and the arm line a little bit. And so when we try to work with our own world, we begin to work with this idea of a sadness around the nature of the world, the nature of ourselves in the world. And that sadness awakens a desire for compassion, which I've talked about a bit before in other classes, and I've emphasized the fact that compassion is not as much a feeling as it is an action. Compassion is experienced in the world as action. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? So coming out. Almost there. Almost there. So our next pose will be seal. Seal being the continuation of Sphinx pose. So when you're ready, you can come into seal, which is traditionally like a high cobra. But you can play with this many ways, bringing the hands forward, relaxing, even doing Sphinx pose. if you'd like. But taking a back bend here with the hands flat on the floor. Again, you may have noticed that the energy that we're working with here has to do with palm down, palm up. And again, working through this line of the small and large intestines. So taking the pose. Again, you can relax the skull. So we become awake and aware, and I know that Buddhism somehow oftentimes seems like we're kind of bumming everyone out. Kind of is a little bit of a bummer. But there's a wonderful haiku which sort of points to this experience we have when we're awake to the world. And it goes, with dewdrops dripping, I wish somehow I could wash this perishing world. So, this perishing world, such a sad image, right? This idea of the world passing away. But it is a truth. It is a truth that the world is perishing and is forever changing. Changing, evolving. And the world itself, not just the physical world, but also our world, which is, again, relationship between heart and environment, is always subject to that sense of loss. Always subject to the sense of loss. Yet, yet we're so given by nature almost to want to care for it. I try to talk to my mother at least once a week. I usually call her after teaching yoga on my way home. It's winter now in New York. She lives in New York, and it's probably like -25, right? And I call her, and it's winter, and she's an avid gardener, and so mostly what I get is, it's cold and everything's dead. This is what I get. This is my conversation with her. I've learned just to listen. Everything's dead. Everything's cold. You know, what's interesting, though, is that every year this happens, right? Everything dies. Her perennials die. Her tulips die. Things just die. And yet, every year, she plants again. It takes an interesting... Or rather, let me say that differently. That's the way it is, isn't it? Right? We plant, grows, it dies. We lament it, but then all of a sudden we find ourselves out there planting again, as if, like, this year, the perennials are going to go for like 6 years, right? They're called perennials for a reason, people. The point being, go ahead and deepen if you like. Even knowing that her plants are going to die and it's going to get cold and it's going to be miserable, and even I, knowing that calling her, I'm going to get this reaction. We just keep doing it, don't we? We just keep working to beautify the world, to be in the world. And that's really it. That when this haiku, which sounds so depressing, With dewdrops dripping, I wish somehow I could wash this perishing world. But we do, don't we? We want to comfort, we want to support, we want to grow, even in a world where everything is subject to time, to transformation, and ultimately to death. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? And can I relax around that sensation? So coming down. If you feel like the practice has been a little bit long today, it has in a sense because normally we're not doing so many single-sided poses in a row. We usually flip-flop. So this is our first bilateral pose. So it can feel a bit longer. We're going to take our last yin pose, which will be a shorter hold. It'll be a neck stretch. We've done this neck stretch before a few times, but let's roll onto our spines. You can feel free to keep your head oriented as it is. And begin by bending your knees, feet flat to the floor. And to take this neck stretch, many of you may remember it, please take your right leg and widen it out so that your right foot is on the floor, coming off your mat. And you should be able to reach down and grab your right ankle with your right hand. So please do that. This is where we get the traction from. You're going to push down through your foot to be able to get more sensation here. But once you've grabbed, if you can't grab the ankle, you can grab onto a pant leg, or you can use a towel to grab onto wrap it around. Please take your left hand up and gently pull the side of your head over, or gently pull your head over to the left side, creating a stretch to the neck. Now, a couple of options here. You can straighten your left leg now, if you'd like. Now, to deepen sensation, do not pull more on your head. Instead, please walk your foot down a little bit so that you feel more of a tug through the top of your shoulder. There will be no chime for deepening. We only hold these for about 2 minutes because we're working with smaller muscle groups here.
So the nose is pointing where?
So the nose, good question.
Because everybody's different.
It's totally true. And everyone's doing it wrong. Just kidding. So the nose can point up to the sky, or the head can roll over to the side. Your goal here is to create a deep stretch from the top of the shoulder up through the side of the neck, and to also feel a sort of deep stretch near the back of the shoulder, so that you're getting both the front of the neck and the back of the neck, where the muscles connect up the side of the neck into the jawbone. Thank you, Albertina. Good question. So, like my mother, we're always lamenting then planting. Lamenting then planting. And the distinction, maybe, if my mother was a Buddhist, was that she would say, everything's dead, but everything is ready for life. And so, recognizing not the end as if it were a singular point, but rather the cycle. For me, this image of washing is also important because it's such a fundamental sort of act of caring, isn't it? Think about, if we're parents, about when we're sort of bathing our children. As our parents get older, caring for them, caring for someone who's sick. But this idea of washing It's very sort of symbolic. It shows a deep kind of care for the nature of the world, nature of the person. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? You can release slowly, perhaps first starting with the hand on the ankle. Allow that to stretch away from you and feel the rebound in the shoulder, and then bring the head back to center. And then when you're ready, taking the left side, so bending your left leg, foot flat on the floor, and then taking it wide, grabbing the ankle so that you can shimmy the foot down to deepen the stretch on your shoulder, and then adding the pull of the head to the side. Again, the nose either up or turned slightly, but the determinant is this level of sensation you can generate. Once you've established the position of the head, you will simply, or rather to create more sensation, you will walk the foot down and away. So continuing to thinking about perhaps this idea of the heart and our existing in relationship to the world. And the kind of sadness or tenderheartedness that arises in relationship to the suffering of the world. And strong in the small intestine, in the differentiator, in the separator. Still feeling, in spite of all the difficulties in the world, a sense of its goodness, of its rightness. And continuing to want to water, to cultivate, to hold dear ourselves and the world around us. Am I here now? Can I feel what's going on in my body? Can I relax around that sensation? Please unwind. Release and stretch. And then when you're ready to, please come up to seated. If you're practicing with us on Periscope, thank you. The battery is going to die soon. So you're going to end on your own, but for those of us here, you paid the $15 to play. So our last practice today will actually be, as we've been incorporating, is a hand mudra. So this is one that is meant to cultivate the heart. So please just raise one hand to sort of mirror me. You can take your left up and mirror, or you can take your right up. It's Please take your index finger down and place it at the base of your thumb. Then curl your middle two fingers and touch them with the tip of your thumb. So tip of fingers to tip of thumb, pinky finger extends. And do this, your other hand.
Could you try that one more time?
Sure, not a problem. So index finger to the base of the thumb.
Thank you.
Middle fingers touch the tip of the thumb. Pinky finger extends. And please bring the hands down. So this position helps to cultivate the energy of the heart. Don't ask why or how. It'll take too long to explain. Just accept. Just closing the eyes and breathing. The hand position. Allow everything to be as it is. Ignore that. It was my Apple Watch hitting the bowl.